Hi, I want to introduce a friend of mine, but also a former student and again, a person that has applied the concepts and ideas of the value formula. Her name is TJ Martinez, and she is the director of IT enterprise or enterprise IT rather at the University of Customer Support at the University of New Mexico. And I appreciate, first of all, you're being here, Tammy. Thank you very much for taking time out of your, I know your very busy schedule to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And the first question I wanted to ask you, when there's a lot of things that are out there, right? And what do you think of the five components of the value formula, the vision, alignment, leverage, uniqueness, and execution? Which of those five seem to appeal to you the most, or to your organization? Or maybe another way to look at it, which one do you think provided the most value to you, at least initially?
Well, hopefully people don't think I'm cheating, but it's actually your first chapter, which talks about value, because part of what you bring up in the first chapter is going above and beyond expectations. Right now, UNM is in a good place with our budget, but previously, I've been there 13 years. We have had times where the budget has been cut and we've been asked to do more with less. And your first chapter really focuses on doing more with less. And, part of that doesn't mean, what I like about that chapter, it doesn't mean that we're going to take on more work and kill ourselves, right? The one thing about doing that is your best people could get burnt out and you can turn around and lose them. And so when it's time to do more with less, you look at value. Like, what value are you bringing to the university? That is what I have to look at. And that was very helpful for me to divine that value and meet these challenges of budget cuts. We're in a point now where our budget's not being expanded, but we are taking on more work. But after attending your webinar and using your book, I've made some strategic decisions that I think helps us deliver value and actually doing more with less.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for that. So what do you feel makes the value formula unique in its approach? I mean, there's a lot of things that are out there, right?
Yes.
And you found yourself, drawn to this, or and you attended the online workshop that I did. But what do you think is unique in its approach, or made it effective for you?
So I think for me, the steps that you lay out in your book to help you define your value, I found, I'm sorry what chapter it is. I actually think it's probably, maybe I highlighted it, but there's one chapter where you give questions to ask. Actually several chapters at the end. Here's questions that you want to take back to your team. I found that those were very valuable to help answer and have the conversation. I feel like it's an official, or it's a guidebook for official leaders and unofficial, right? We know that, I have leaders on my team that may not be in a management position, but based on their feedback and the work that they do and the initiative that they take, I leaned on those people to work with me in this book to help us identify the value that we create and how we are going to do more with less.
So one of the things that I
Excuse me.
definitely talk about is to focus on those big, wildly important goals, those game changers. Did it help you? Did the concepts and ideas that you worked with through the value form, did it help you focus on those, or better yet, accomplish those wildly important goals and priorities? And if so, why?
Sorry. Absolutely, definitely. Actually, I want to say, and I'll just tell you a little bit of what we've done in the past. When I started 13 years ago, our service desk was run by students, which is great. But the challenge is the student is their number one for their academic career. They have homework, they have tests. we had them, if we were lucky, 20 hours a week. When you have someone, you know, they did a fantastic job, the best job that they could, and we had a lot of training and we had many students. But the challenge was always having them be able to retain that knowledge. So when they would have a question, they'd have to go look it up. And so several years ago, faced with do more with less budget cuts, I actually flipped, based on this book, I actually flipped the student employee budget line, the salary line, to hire 4 full-time employees. And that was a huge challenge and cultural shift, because the university, they like having jobs available for students, but we weren't able to keep up. IT was growing, we were doing more things. And so by shifting that budget, we have now 4 full-time, actually we've added a 5th person, who are there 40 hours a week. They get used to the questions that they're being asked. They know quickly where to find that internal support triage. They're involved in a lot of meetings. They understand what we do at the university. So the value that they bring is being able to answer questions in a timely manner. If you're from the help desk industry, our first contact resolution is at like 90% with our full-time employees. I would never have made that decision to do more with less, because I'm doing more with less. I don't have 20 student employees. I have 4 full-time, 5 full-time employees who are delivering the value to the university. I hear from our customers when they call us, number 1, we answer the phone in a timely manner. Number 2, for the most part, our answers are accurate. And number 3, if people are having problems with IT, we're able to solve them. Number 4, when I mentioned that other departments aren't answering the phone, we at least can give them some information. We, again, our value, which is part of our vision to provide accurate, timely support, we actually warm transfer people to other departments. They may need to go to student services. They may need to go to career services. They may need to go to HR. We warm transfer them. You're on mute, Ken.
Well, there we go. Now I'm not on mute anymore. So, I mean, that's very insightful. And this is, I mentioned to Jim earlier, who we talked to, that this has been kind of eye-opening for me as well, because it's interesting and fun to learn how people are taking these ideas and actually getting, as you pointed out, some value from those. And it's very gratifying to hear that. So one of the things that, the last question I kind of had, lined up here, and I may ask you another question, just sneak it in, is what if there's any other point, with your experience, again, after the workshop, and then, getting the book and applying the concepts and ideas from that you feel might be important to those who are attending the webinar, something that, a tip or just an idea or just an insight that you got that you think would be valuable to them?
I would say attending the webinar, reading the book and then discussing it was awesome, and listening to your presentation and your experiences that you share. I know it wasn't in the webinar, but I'm just going to bring up the whole Lexus 0 defects that you've talked about. Has been prominent in my mind. But I think the value, well, I don't want to use the word value. I think where attendees are going to, the icing on top of that cake is interacting with other peers. We're not alone. This book was not written because you had an epiphany that we're all struggling, like no one solved this problem. You've pulled together your experience and these concepts in a very easy manner to read. It's almost like a roadmap for the strategy to build your mission statement. And that's what I really enjoyed with the book, with the webinar. And then, of course, adding in peers who are struggling with the same thing. Sometimes we feel like we're out there alone. We're really not. And I think that really is the benefit that you have brought together with your book and the webinar. And just real quick, I'm almost ready to retire from my job. I plan on getting ready to take my exam to be a social worker. But the concepts of that of your book, I've actually been able to apply in my internship, my most recent internship, to the point where they've asked me to come back and actually be the program manager, because I help them, understand their mission and communication and process. And okay, based on all of this, here's the value that you're bringing to this organization.
That's very cool. So, well, first of all, congratulations on planning a second career is basically what I'm hearing, right?
Yes.
So,
Well, I went to school, graduated last May. The next step is to pass the exam for my permanent license to practice as a social worker.
very cool. Very cool.
Yes.
So, just to kind of, wrap things up a little bit, because I want to make sure that I'm not imposing too much on your time. And again, deeply appreciate your willingness to volunteer your time and to kind of talk with us today. Are there any other thoughts that, that as you were kind of preparing to talk with us today, that have kind of popped in your head, like, that's a point I'd like to make, or there's something that I got that I did not necessarily expect to get, there's always these kind of serendipities, but just, kind of off the top of your head, what are some things that you might want to share?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but I can't stress enough that getting your leadership, getting your team together and working through the stuff in the book, like the chapters, right? And those questions that you have that inspire critical thinking, and having that conversation with the team and letting them come to the epiphany of the value they bring. When you're sitting on the phones, for my team in particular, they're on the phones for, 6-7 hours a day. They're documenting things, and sometimes they don't necessarily see, because they have tunnel vision on what they're doing for customers. And so part of what we've done in a feedback loop is when customers do let us know that someone's done a great job, we share it. Number one, to show someone, hey, to provide that valuable feedback. Number two, and if you want kudos, here's what you need to do, right? And hopefully inspire some people to step up. And so it is definitely a challenge to keep morale up, especially in we're implementing a lot of technology, security at the forefront. It's not getting easier to use technology, and they sometimes deal with customers who don't understand. And so hopefully we're giving them the tools based on this book and conversations and discussions that you have outlined, help them understand the individual value that they're bringing to a team that also brings value to a very diverse audience at the university system.
Very good. Thank you. So one of the things I shared this earlier as well, that one of the reviews rather of the book that was put on Amazon started with the title, simple to, easy to read, easy to understand, easy to apply. And I get the impression from your responses that you kind of agree with that concept.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, they teach I've got a degree in business, my undergrad degree. They do full courses on this stuff. And there's plenty out there, but this just is very succinct. It's easy to follow. As you mentioned, easy to read. I love, love, love the personal anecdotes in there. Your professor that you spoke about that said efficiency is doing things right, effectiveness is doing the right things. Those are conversations we have in my staff meeting all the time. And so to me, that's what also makes this such a important tool, regardless of where you are in your organization, to help create your value formula, using the value formula to do more with less.
Do less with more.
Right?
Yeah. No,
That's exactly what that's my goal.
Yeah, and that's actually, one of the things that when I was coming up with the subtitle for the book, Corey Kite, who is also going to be talking to us, I ran that by him and I said, did these ideas help you do more with less because they were struggling at the time? And did it help you reduce stress? And he goes, absolutely. He said, so I would not have come up with that subtitle had he not endorsed it and said that that's valid. So
Um, I did wanted to add one thing that just popped in my head. I'm making an assumption that you all work from home and that you all are doing video meetings. And that's a bad assumption, right? My team, uh, the phone agents are required to come on site 1 day a week, but we have our staff meetings on video conference. This book right here helps me ask questions that can be answered, either if someone wants to go off mute, or they want to chat about it. And sometimes in order, I do it to try to help build synergy around the team because we're not in person. I will say we occasionally get together to do pizza parties. But also just to spur thinking, I'll drop a question in our chat, occasionally and ask them to, respond when they get a chance. And so that's kind of, even though this was written before COVID, it's still very applicable and valuable if you are doing virtual teams.
Kind of the culmination of a lot of research, a lot of experience, and I appreciate your pointing out the anecdotes that I kind of threw in there along the way. And it's based on things that kind of stuck to me.